Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is official. Benito Mussolini has been reincarnated in the person of Donald Trump and has been elected the 45th President of the United States. As is our wont and how we do things here on the Hard Starboard Radio channel and the conservative Ronin playlist thread, we will make the rounds of the usual contributors and commentators, and then I will give you my thoughts on the latest developments. First up this morning, Kevin Williamson at nationalreview.com, who poses a very simple four-word question. What now, Mr. President-elect? The GOP must encourage Trump's good instincts, discourage his bad ones, and hope for the best. You're going to hear a lot of that throughout these first three segments. Hope, hope. Oh, we hope it will turn out well. Oh, we hope that it won't go like we know it will. And it's not difficult to see, but we'll go through the hope first, and then I will explain to you why that hope is forlorn. Well, that was unexpected. And yeah, Joe Scarafone, it was. Hardly anybody, even among pundits who were supporting Trump, who were voting for Trump, thought that Trump would actually win. So don't get on your, oh, how does it feel to be wrong for a year now? You know, I mean, that's true, but a lot of people were, all right? The polls and projections told the same story, and the pundits predicted the ruination of the Republican Party, which, by the way, it may not look like it, but it has been ruined, as we will see as time goes forward. But they predicted, and it was an entirely reasonable prediction, a narrow Trump loss, or either a narrow Trump loss that would set off a long-term civil war between the conservative and national socialist wings of the party, and that's going to happen, trust me. Whereas a resounding loss would mean Trump taking Republicans down with him, probably handing control of the Senate, if not the House, over to the Democrats. And by the way, the Republicans lost a net of 2 seats. Mark Kirk in Illinois, who was going to go down regardless. And it looks like Kelly Ayotte, tomato, let's call the whole thing off. Looks like she's going down in New Hampshire. Remember, she was the one who, at one of the debates with her Democrat challenger, New Hampshire Governor Mackie Hassan, said on camera into a microphone for the entire state of New Hampshire to hear that she thought Trump was a good role model. Looks like she's going down, but that's it. 2-seat loss, so the Republicans are going to remain in the majority in the United States Senate by a 52-48 margin. So, and of course we held the House, but then that was not really in any doubt. Although the Republicans are going to lose about 15 or so seats. But the Republicans retain control of Congress, which any other time and any time before this one would have been a good thing, but now with the GOP transformed into the principal party of the left, you know, it's, well, 6 of one, half dozen of the other, really. But nobody was predicting a Trump victory. Well, we'll see how that works out. Rather than being left in disarray, the Republican Party, as opposed to the conservative movement, is left in an extraordinarily, ostensibly strong position. On paper, anyway. Perhaps it is more accurate to say that the Democrat Party stands diminished. And brother, are they diminished? Well, I tell you, Barack Obama really did his job well, didn't he? I mean, think about it. 8 years ago, the Democrats had the presidency. They had super majorities, or not super majorities, but filibuster-proof majority. I'll get it eventually. Filibuster-proof majority in the Senate. Huge majority in the House. A majority of state governorships, and of course a majority of state legislatures, legislative chambers. And now look. Without control of either house of Congress, the presidency, or most governorships, even Bernie Sanders Stan, aka Vermont, elected a Republican governor last night, or state legislatures, the Democrats control a lot of city councils in decaying cities and a lot of House seats in or from representing those same cities. All of which means, folks, that in the person of Donald Trump, the left has simply transferred its flag from the Democrat Party to the Republican Party. That's what happened last night, folks. The Republican Party is now the new party of the left. Because we got two left-wing parties now. You may not realize it, but you're going to, as my dear old dad always used to tell me, you're going to find out. You will indeed. So what kind of president will Donald Trump be? Well, I think we know. But again, you'll find out. Now, Williamson tries to put lipstick on this pig by writing that there is reason to be cautious, extraordinarily cautious in any optimism, but he thinks there is still grounds for optimism. Now, this is pure hope casting. Not wish casting, hope casting. You know, I mean, either you believe what you say about a candidate during a campaign, or you don't. If you don't believe what you say about a candidate during a campaign, and you say it anyway, then you're just engaging in empty hyperbole and nothing you say really matters. Especially afterwards when you say, well, I hope this candidate that I know is not going to do any of the things that I now hope he will do. You know, I can't do that because I don't believe that. And I'll get to that in a moment, but this is Kevin Williamson's take. Conservatives should make the most of this opportunity, like they'll be allowed to. The first and most important thing to do is to take whatever steps are necessary to ensure that Trump sticks by the promise he made. His record on keeping his word is not very good, you see. On his list of Supreme Court nominees under consideration. Although I don't know how you make him stick by anything, because, hey, he's going to be the president. And nobody controls Trump. So now Trump, he doesn't need. See, this is what Trumplicans don't. Well, they don't really care. But this is what conservatives don't understand. Now Trump doesn't need you. He's going to be in the White House. He's going to be the president. He doesn't need you. He doesn't need conservatives. Donald Trump, the New York liberal Democrat con man, used conservatives in the GOP primaries to get nominated, and then he used them again, conservatives, not the Trumplicans, they're his cultists. They're gone. They're hopeless. But conservatives, he used you to get nominated. He's used you to get elected. And now, guess what? He doesn't need you anymore. He has no reason to pay attention to any of you. He is like the last female conquest. You people, and that includes you, Douglas V. Gibbs, are like the last pussy he grabbed. He's moving on. He's moving on. He got what he wanted from you, and now you are now irrelevant. As irrelevant as a lot of you people tried to claim that never Trump was until it looked like Trump was going to lose, and then you insisted that somehow we were costing Trump the election, and now we've gone back to being irrelevant losers again. But so have you. This is what you're going to come to grips with this. You're going to find out. So Trump does. What steps can be taken to ensure that Trump sticks by his Supreme Court promises? How are you going to force him to follow through on that? Nobody controls Trump, remember? I mean, this is very reminiscent of 1992. Bill Clinton. Remember, Bill Clinton spent the entire 1992 campaign promising a middle-class tax cut. And then, after the election, even before the inauguration, he was already reneging upon it. Trump will do the same thing, folks. How do you ensure? What steps can be taken to ensure that Trump follows through on his Supreme Court promises? You can't. You can't. Because nobody controls Trump. I mean, I'll get to that. There's a lot to talk about here. If a trumpetancy means ensuring a generation of decent constitutional jurisprudence on the First and Second Amendments, then that will be worth a great deal in the way of trade-offs. But that's not what it means. But what trade-offs, you may be asking? Well, conservatives should meet Trump on his own ground on the question of immigration, especially illegal immigration, which, by the way, he's an amnesty shill, so don't expect to get what he promised on that either. He threw that overboard 3 months ago, if you will recall. And Coulter knows, she just never won't admit it. His proposals on the question have been fantastical, meaning, which was the whole point. They were meant to do nothing but wedge his way into the GOP nominating process. That were only purpose. And now, again, now he doesn't need you immigration hawks anymore. He got what he wanted from you, and now you're just going to be discarded while he makes deals with Democrats. And, you know, the Republicans and the Republican majorities in Congress, what are they going to oppose their own president? No, they're not. I'll tell you what. I will make a promise. A prediction and a promise. You're going to see comprehensive immigration reform passed in the next Congress. And you won't see Obamacare repealed. A couple of things to look for over the next couple of years. Don't say you didn't or weren't warned. You heard it here first, November the 9th, 2016. But his proposals on the question of illegal immigration have been fantastical, making Mexico pay for a wall and all that, which is never going to happen. And again, it was never a serious policy promise. But his insistence that this be addressed rather than being kept eternally on the national back burner is appropriate. Well, comprehensive immigration reform, I'm telling you. There are reasonable steps on immigration that can be taken, but Trump won't. An enforcement-first approach that secures the borders and the airports and the visa system and focuses on workplace enforcement before moving on to broader reform questions such as replacing the reunification-oriented chain immigration system with one based on economic criteria. But none of that's going to happen. I mean, there might be mixed in somewhere in comprehensive immigration reform, but then isn't it always? I mean, that's why they call it comprehensive. And that stuff, those steps, immigration or enforcement, first approach, securing the border, etc., that will be the stuff to be done later. Amnesty will be first. That's the essence of comprehensive immigration reform. And make no mistake about it, you know, it almost does not matter that the Republicans are in the majority, still in the majority in both houses of Congress, because they got to go along with whatever Trump proposals. They do. They're going to go against their own president. Wasn't that one of the criticisms of the GOP back under George W. Bush? That Republicans had total control of the government, and look at what they did. They passed Medicare Part D. Huge farm bills, huge transportation bills, spent money like a drunken sailor. Remember what 2006 is all about? Teaching the GOP a lesson. That's coming around again, and sooner rather than later, my friends. Mark my words on this. Taking positive early steps to cooperate with Trump in those areas where this can be constructive is useful for two reasons. It keeps him busy working on things where he is less likely to do damage, and it makes it easier to oppose him on those areas where he is wrong. But again, nobody controls Trump. Republicans are irrelevant. The Republican majorities in both houses of Congress are irrelevant because ultimately they're going to follow Trump's lead. That's how this kind of thing works. So really, it's not going to be Ryan and McConnell. It's going to be Trump's going to be negotiating with Schumer and Pelosi. Because do you seriously think about this for a minute? We know who Donald Trump is. We know what an authoritarian tin pot he's going to be. So if anybody doesn't follow his lead, among anybody in the Republican majorities in Congress don't follow his lead, if Ryan and McConnell don't follow his lead, guess what's going to happen to them? They either go along with his lead or they don't. And he'll be dealing with Schumer. He'll be making deals with Schumer and Pelosi. And his party will have to go along. Now, I'm not saying every last member in the Republican majorities will just go along like lemmings, but maybe because the Republican majorities are still exist in both houses of Congress, but they are smaller. 52-48 in the Senate and 230 some to 200 roughly in the House. So it won't take many Republican defections to create problems for Trump-oid legislation. And what will he order, in effect, Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell to do? Make deals with Democrats. They're going to need Democrat votes. They're going to need Democrat votes to pass Trump's left-wing legislation. I'm telling you, don't doubt me on this. I know you will. Oh, you've been wrong the whole year. Don't doubt me on this. This is how it's going to unfold in practice. And a lot of cucks are going to rue the day that they supported this guy. But we continue here because I don't want every sentence here. I want to just go off into where I'm going to my conclusion in essence, and we got a lot to cover here. And yeah, Trump is wrong, and so much. we take him at his word, not only wrong, but catastrophically wrong on a number of things. Not, for example, NATO, NAFTA, tariffs, protectionism, and so much more. Republicans should be ready for what is coming, though, and go into this with open eyes. Well, if they had been ready for what was coming, Trump would never have been the nominee in the first place. And then they closed their eyes after he became the nominee. So, you know, you can dispense with that one. Now, there is nothing to celebrate in the elevation of Donald Trump, but this is the consolation. This is, you know, I mean, it's like you finally got married and she's ugly. Or, you know, to delve into Trump speak. It's like Trump's reaction after he grabbed the pussy of a woman who turned out to be not nearly as attractive as he thought she was. I mean, there's nothing to celebrate in the elevation of Trump, but there's much to celebrate in the defeat of Hillary Clinton. Because the defeat of Hillary Clinton just vindicates everything that I've been saying about her, and many others. I'm not the only one, obviously. For years now, that she is the antithesis of her husband. She had no political skill set. She was abrasive, unlikable, untrustworthy. People didn't like her. The more visible she was, the less popular she became. In fact, the reason that she lost, because this was Hillary losing far more than it was Trump winning. Trump wasn't Hillary, ultimately. And the reason for that was because of the email gate. What would you say? The email gate dead body corpse floating to the top of the swamp with 10 days to go before Election Day. That is the one and only reason that Donald Trump is president-elect this morning. Email gate ultimately did her in. And she didn't have her husband's preternatural charm and strange luck and just almost supernatural ability to just swindle people, fool people, distract people. Squirrel! She was not able to overcome her own shortcomings. Even facing somebody as monumentally weak as Donald Trump. And there's a lot of Schadenfreude there. I mean, there's a video that a CNN video that I couldn't find to download for this video, but it's really funny. 46 seconds, and it shows people at the Jacob Javits Center in New York, which was Hillary Clinton's election night. You know, that's where she was last night. And oh my God, there's weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth and and it had this really somber, almost funeral dirge-esque music playing in the background, and it was really funny. I wish I could show you the video. My description of it doesn't really do it justice, but it culminates the last 3 seconds. There's this woman who really ugly, fat, you know, Wolverine steel-toed boots, diesel dyke kind of woman, kind of women that Mrs. Clinton likes to hang around with, and she sees that the camera, the CNN camera is on her, and so she's looking off to the side, and then she notices the camera, and then she goes like this. Just flips off the camera. That reminds me of the Monday Night Football in 1972. The New England Patriots were playing at the Houston Oilers at the Astrodome, and that was one of the years when the Oilers were 1-13. They went 1-13 consecutive years. Hardly anybody was left on the stands, and the Monday Night Football cameras zoomed in, ABC cameras on a guy who was a fan who was asleep in the stands in his seat, and he kind of wakes up, sees the camera on him, and then he just goes, it flips the bird, and Frank Gifford, Howard Cosell, and Danny Don Meredith are kind of just speechless for a few seconds, and that's what it took to make Howard Cosell speechless, by the way. And then Meredith pops up with, well, I guess that means we're still number one. So I guess that means that Wolverine steel-toed boot diesel dyke woman allegedly still thinks Hillary Clinton is number one. It was really funny. I wish I could show it to you. I couldn't find it on YouTube, unfortunately. But there's a lot of schadenfreude in Mrs. Clinton's defeat. And sometime back, Williamson described the Clintons as the penicillin-resistant syphilis of American politics. Well, it turns out that there is a treatment after all, though it may remind us of some of the more exotic and unpleasant treatments that were relied upon in the time before antibiotics. In other words, the cure may be worse than the disease. Now, Mrs. Clinton is an unusually unlikable figure, having, as she does, the same sliminess and slipperiness as her husband, but none of his facile charm and nearly flawless political instincts. She's also wrong about some fundamental things, what the Constitution means and how the Supreme Court should interpret it. Well, they're not supposed to interpret anything. They're supposed to apply the law, not interpret it. But I digress. I mean, that's water 213 years under the bridge. Judicial review, Marbury versus Madison. Oh, and let's see, abortion, gun rights, crime, education, taxes, the economy, just keep going down the list and through the Rolodex. Now, it is a myth that the Chinese word for crisis is a combination of the words for danger and opportunity. But this moment does present us with both dangers and opportunities. Well, the dangers, yeah. Opportunities, not so much. We will not end up with a reliably constitutionalist Supreme Court for the first time in my lifetime. We will not end up with a reformed corporate tax code. We will not end up with a sensible immigration system. And we will not see the restoration of a Reagan-esque foreign policy. What we will end up with is a series of stupid and destructive trade wars, tanking the economy even worse than Obama managed to do, and that I didn't think that was humanly possible, and probably shooting wars as well, and a president sidelined by personal and business scandals that have not yet come entirely to light, but oh my God, are they going to? I mean, remember, Trump is, among other things, being sued for fraud in the matter of Trump University, an enterprise for which the adjective sketchy would be generous. And we almost certainly will end up with an even more distorted and aggrandized, read, dictatorship presidency. As has been the case for years, the most thankless task will fall to congressional Republicans, Republicans, and to the Republican governors and state legislators who do important real-world work that is rarely noticed in the national conversation. And now that latter part, the state and local level, if there's any future salvation for conservatism, that's where it'll come from, folks. But, what could have been a conservative renaissance in 2016, well, that's a generation away now, if it comes at all. See, one of those thankless tasks will be learning to manage a Republican president who may be tempted to stray off course in the pursuit of overly grand ideas. But that's something that congressional Republicans should have done or would have done well to learn 16 years ago. But remember, nobody controls Trump. Dan McLaughlin, a.k.a. the baseball crank, weighed in at the corner this morning. We're going to need each other, America. Now, this is a kind of a fascinating twist on how things may unfold, because what McLaughlin is describing here may be a bipartisan alliance against Trump. I'm not going to comment on the efficacy or the advisability of that, but it may be a kind of strange bedfellows collaboration. I don't know. I'd have to see how that unfolded. But at this writing, it was 9:49 p.m. last night Pacific time, Hillary Clinton's path to 270 electoral votes seems gone, and it was. And the only question is whether Trump gets to 270 or needs the House to vote for him, which, he exceeded 270. He carried Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. That was where he broke through. I mean, everything else went pretty much according to prediction. Nevada went to Hillary, Colorado went to Hillary, Virginia went to Hillary, Trump won Ohio, Trump won Florida, Trump won North Carolina, New Hampshire is still, I haven't seen it, New Hampshire declared yet, so that was kind of teetering. But the big surprises were the Rust Belt. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. That's where the surprises came. Now, I think it's fair to say, McLaughlin continues, that everyone in the politics, punditry, and journalism business, even people who were rooting for or outwardly confident of a Trump victory, are shell-shocked this morning. I don't think even Trump ever anticipated things working out like this. Yet, while Trump is reaching into Rust Belt states the GOP has failed to crack on the presidential level since the end of the Cold War, it's also a big night for actual Republicans up and down the ballot across the country, as I alluded to in the previous segment. Many of them running ahead of Trump. The historical dynamic favoring the party out of power after a two-term presidency clearly played a major role. In other words, again, it wasn't any Trump strength, it was the pendulum, the duopoly, the two-party pendulum swinging back in the GOP's direction. The Democrats being exhausted after a decade in power, and of course Hillary Clinton, the worst national candidate of the modern era from either party. Except for Trump, but Trump was on the right side of the pendulum. History being cyclical, though, Republicans are going to pay for this, and sooner rather than later, and dearly. You just wait till 2018. Oh my God. Nasty. That's coming. There's a lot of mixed emotions among conservatives who bitterly oppose Trump as unelectable, unfit for office, and unconservative. Because he obviously wasn't unelectable, but unfit for office and unconservative, darn right tootin'. Damn betcha. And there's a lot of shock and horror, Schadenfreude, delicious Schadenfreude, among Democrats and liberals who see the dark night of fascism, or at least fascism they don't control, descending, and who made no attempt to prepare themselves emotionally for this, as they never do. I mean, this is what happens when you make socialism, Marxism, your religion. Because the arrogance and moral supremacism that comes with it just absolutely pervades everything. And so Democrats, it doesn't ever occur to them that they could ever actually lose. It's outside their frame of reference. Democrats winning elections is simply the way of things. So when they lose, it just shatters them and, of course, makes them even crazier. I mean, you talk about the other end of time's rainbow. I mean, picture last night. In fact, picture Grant Park in Chicago 8 years ago, and then the Jacob Javits Center in New York last night. You'll never see a greater contrast in your time on this planet. I'm telling you. Shout and Freudalicious, ladies and gentlemen. But on some level, that may be the rare moment that gives us some common cause. Now, again, I'm not going to venture any guesses or predictions on the plausibility of this. I'm just going to throw it out there, and you can consider it for yourselves. Conservatives and liberals have spent years beating each other up. I've certainly spared no zeal in doing so. Just as conservative Republicans and moderate Republicans did, rhinos, until Trump drove a bus between the Cruz and Kasich factions in the primaries. And now we have a president who cares not for any of us and has no clue what he's doing. And while the right will enjoy some schadenfreude and bank whatever wins we can wrangle out of a Trump White House, which don't count on any, the worst thing for conservatives and liberals may be to get so wrapped up in fighting each other we forget that the new regime owes a debt of service to all Americans that it is ill-equipped to provide, and really has no intention of providing. And also that it will need to be constrained by those hoary old notions of separation of powers that have been so, well, not just disdained in the Obama years, but completely destroyed. I mean, Trump is going to take that baton of tyranny from Obama, and he's just going to continue to blow it up as wide as he possibly can. Principled conservatives who are ready to work with President Trump some of the time and against him at other times may turn out to be the friends liberals need right now and vice versa. And again, principled conservatives are not going to have anything on which to work with the President Trump. Not happening. Can Trump America be a country that is respectful of the Constitution and tolerant of dissent and minority groups of all kinds?
He did. Oh my God, dude.
But the baseball crank thinks that the answer might surprise us all, as strange bedfellows are willing to work together. You know, kind of like when Captain Janeway made that deal with the devil with the Borg Collective against the Undine, species 8472. We might all need each other more than we ever imagined, because Trump is going to need a lot of help to do this job, and a lot of spine will be needed to remind him of his limits. But remember, he doesn't see any limits. Remember, nobody controls Trump, not even him. David French, in the corner at nationalreview.com this morning, does his Christian duty, as the Bible tells us, to pray for our leaders, in invoking God's blessing upon President-elect Donald Trump. And you know what? I second what he says here, his first paragraph, how he begins this post at the corner. I have never been more wrong about anything in my life than I've been in my assessment of Donald Trump's political prospects, which is really a commentary on the American people and than it is on Donald Trump. I discounted him in the primary, and I was discounting him in the general election all the way until about, 6:30 p.m. Pacific time on election night last night? In other words, that's what should have happened. The fact that it didn't is not a good commentary on the American people. But now Trump, what have I always said, folks? I am a realist. I take the world, I follow Nick Fury's maxim to take the world as it is, not as we would like it to be. And the reality is that Donald Trump is now the president-elect and the future commander-in-chief of the second or third most powerful military the world has ever seen. I pray earnestly and unambiguously that God may bless him, grant him wisdom, give him something he's never had up to this point, and open his ears to wise counsel. I pray earnestly and unambiguously that I end up being just as wrong about his character and capabilities as I was about his political prospects. I want him to be good, to be wise, and to be worthy of the Oval Office. In other words, David French is channeling his inner Baron von Strucker.
This is the age of miracles, Doctor.
At the same time that I've been never Trump, I have also been never Hillary. And there is a measure of real Schadenfreudelicious justice in America's rejection of Hillary Clinton. The electorate has directly and intentionally rebuked her corruption, her double standards, and her arrogance. In other words, Trump didn't win, she lost, and she deserved to. This election was not about the love of Trump. It was about rejecting the colossal hubris of the, communist establishment. This is a good thing, a very good thing indeed. Pity it was wasted on another left-wing nut narcissist. Moreover, with the GOP retaining the House and Senate, though by smaller margins, there are many, many good and principled, there might be some, conservatives returning to Washington. They have the opportunity to right an enormous number of statutory and regulatory wrongs that, of course, their president their president will not permit them to do, is remember, Trump looks upon them as subordinates. They do what they're told or they're out. This victory was not about Trump. This victory was not about Trump. From top to bottom, the GOP had a far, far better night than it did in its presidential landslides of 1972, 1980, and 1984. The Republican Party now runs the United States of America, just like it did from 2002, or what was that, 2000, well, the first 6 months of 2001, and then from 2003 to 2007. How'd that turn out? And George W. Bush, while not a movement conservative, he was a good man. That's not the case this time. Finally, the role of conservatives, whether they were never Trump or supporting Trump, in other words, whether they were conservatives, never Trump, or cuck-servatives, supporting Trump out of a belief that he represented the lesser of two evils, the role is clear. Trump is not naturally or intellectually conservative. He is self-interested. It is vital that we unite to strongly and clearly declare that life, liberty, and constitutional governance must prevail. But then if that were possible, which it's now not, they wouldn't have nominated this guy in the first place, right? So, I mean, we can try, but he's not going to listen because nobody controls Trump! Conservatism did not win the White House tonight. Conservatism has been exiled from the White House for a minimum of another 8 years. Assuming Trump's one term and his being replaced by, guess who? Julian Castro in 2020. And then God knows how long he'll be around. In other words, last night, conservatism lost its voice. Conservatism was rendered irrelevant. And it's going to be a long time, if ever, before we get that voice back. And so the Trump era begins. As a conservative writer and podcaster and YouTuber, and as someone who has been very critical of Trump from day one, I feel like I have zero ownership of a Trumpetency, which is quite liberating, actually. And part of that is having no entangling forlorn hopes of his presidency turning out in any way, shape, or form differently than how we know it will. Character is the barometer of an office holder's tenure, ladies and gentlemen. Remember when character mattered? Well, it's also indicative. It is also a bellwether, a predictor. And we know Trump's character, bottom feeding to the end. And this triumph, feeding his amoral narcissism like a matter-antimatter reactor, is not going to magically transform him into a humble conservative public servant like Ronald Reagan or Calvin Coolidge. No, my friends, quite the opposite. And that brings us to Neil Stevens this morning at Red State, doing the public service for the country that Rush Limbaugh did 8 years ago when he declared that in order for America to come back to survive, we needed Barack Obama to fail because his agenda was harmful to the American way of life. Well, now I say the same thing about Donald Trump. I want him to fail, and I will do my part to work toward that end. You see, no matter who won last night, evil was going to prevail. Based on the polling, the most likely win was by the Nixonian evil of Hillary Clinton, seeking power for its own sake and placing herself above the law. Instead, as all the polling failed last night, Donald Trump won. Trump won a campaign of division and identity politics. "We are the deplorables," his hardcore supporters said. Trump revived the old Democrat politics of white nationalism. Trump's campaign issues go along with that theme. He seeks to harass Mexico and demand tribute in the form of paying for the wall. That's never going to happen. He intends to betray our East European allies and abandon our NATO promises. He oddly refused to rule out using nuclear weapons against Europe, even as he showed signs of having back-channel ties to our Russian enemies. He wants to raise taxes and, in fact, restructure the tax code to punish some businesses and favor others, threatening the livelihood of millions. And that's not even getting into his promised trade war with the Chi-Coms. Reenacting the Smoot-Hawley tariff, deepening the Obama Depression to depths even the original Great Depression of the 1930s never plumbed. He has promised to round up millions of people based on their national background for large-scale deportations and ethnic cleansing, which is never going to happen because the optics would it's never going to happen, is the bottom line. He pledged to fund Planned Parenthood. Remember when the so-called Tea Partiers were incensed that, Republicans won't cut off funding for Planned Parenthood. Trump will fund it. He pledged to fund Planned Parenthood. He expressed a belief that there was good, that they do good work, such that he will continue to give them hundreds of millions, billions in taxpayer dollars. Let's not forget his putting his partial birth abortion zealot sister on the Supreme Court. He built a movement full of Nazis, white nationalists, and the alt-right, which is what the Nazis now call themselves when they want to be respectable. He joked with them, he played footsie with them, and he adopted them as his online wing, using their wicked energy to fuel his campaign when he most needed support. He went as far as to use their anti-Semitic imagery on his own social media accounts. He's dangerously wrong on foreign policy, isolationist in other words, on domestic policy, and on coalition building. There's nothing redeeming about him, and there's no reason to trust him given his documented track record of deceit and abuse toward women, including sleeping around on his wives, in his history. In other words, Donald Trump is every bit as un-American as Barack Obama. And that's what Donald Trump is. He is the right's version of Barack Obama. And I thought we stood against that kind of thing. Evidently not. He has a dangerous attitude toward the power of government over individuals. I mean, you think that Richard Nixon had enemies lists and abused the IRS, and then along came 40 years later Barack Obama, who doubled down on that, who talked about punishing his enemies and helping his friends? Picture what somebody as small and petty and vindictive and vengeful as Donald Trump is going to do with the Justice Department, what he's going to do with the IRS, what he's going to do with the NSA, what he's going to do with the CIA, for that matter. I mean, you talk about Watergate. I mean, can you imagine? I'll guarantee you that's going to be the Trump scandal. That is going to be what brings President Trump down, is vindictiveness and is using and abusing the power of government to punish his enemies. That's what Neil Stevens is really getting at here. Trump has shown himself prone to believing in conspiracy theories, including about 9/11, the Kennedy assassination, and the birth of Barack Obama. Or in other words, trutherism, JFK, and birtherism, and probably the Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot and UFOs as well. Roswell! Yeah, Trump will be the president to open up the Roswell files. Yeah, that'll be entertaining. I can see the National Enquirer hailing him for establishing a summit meeting with the gray aliens from Zeta Reticuli. Yeah, that'll be entertaining. They'll probably sell out to them too. Thus, Donald Trump must fail. There are no hopes, in other words. And it's irrational to maintain them. Donald Trump must fail. He does not share my values. I want him to fail to achieve the things he supports and those things he has said he wants to accomplish as president. I will not support him. I will not cooperate with him. And I will not submit to him. He is going to be the president, but he's not my president any more than Barack Obama was. And I join his conservative opposition. Donald Trump will get from me what Barack Obama got from me. Nothing more. Because, you see, for all those who would implore me to, come on, give Trump a chance, I don't have to. Because he has captured that chance for himself. It's not mine to give. It's his. He's already got it. He's going to get his chance. And now we will all see what he does with it. But just as he never merited the benefit of the doubt that all his cucks foolishly gave him throughout this campaign, so the burden of proof of his worthiness of it rests entirely upon him. And if President Trump actually does pleasantly surprise me on anything, I won't complain. And I will acknowledge it. Again, I'm a realist. I call it as I see it. When I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I'm right more often than I'm wrong. And so, if he surprises me, I'll acknowledge it. Hey, this is a good thing. Yay! But when Trump proves me right, that's right, Joe Scarafoni, I doubt any Trumplican will return that favor. And finally, a decalogue of parting thoughts. 1, just as Donald Trump was the only Republican candidate Hillary Clinton could defeat, so Hillary Clinton was the only Democrat Donald Trump could defeat. This is not his strength, but her weakness. The winner of this election was going to be the candidate who was more visible last. Re-raising Emailgate's public profile over the last 10 days and Trump's staff bounding and gagging him and locking him in a closet proved to be decisive. 2, Americans have apparently opted for the authoritarian celebrity narcissist dictator wannabe in now 3 consecutive elections. I'm still waiting for a convincing explanation as to how this is a positive trend. 3, constitutional conservatism is now officially in indefinite, if not permanent, exile. And after even a partial term of President Trump, the Whigification of the GOP will be complete. In other words, like I said before, get ready for President Julian Castro in 2020 and well beyond. 4. An election fueled by rage never ends well. And conservatives, and maybe even some Trumplicans, will eventually rue the day that they steered us over this Cheeto-dusted cliff. 5. You can't see me. Hillary's consolation is that she can finally divorce Bill now. Maybe she'll even run off with Miley Cyrus. Yeah, Hillary Clinton being twerked by Miley Cyrus. Try scrubbing that out of your cerebellum ever again. 6. It looks like that nationwide Illuminati-driven conspiracy to rig and steal the election for Hillary Clinton wasn't so apocalyptic as Trumplicans now no longer need it to be, or will even acknowledge having shrieked about just a day ago. Ditto how we never-Trumpers will go back to being irrelevant losers after having spent the past 3 months incongruously being denounced as a mortal threat to the deranged yam's chances. 7. All of you who bowed the knee to Trump, and you know who you are, guess what? You now own and get to spend the next 4 or fewer years defending all his gaffes, all his scandals, all his blunders, all his betrayals of conservatism, all the exhausting, insatiable drama, the daily unrelenting battles, all of it. It's all on you. After 8 years of relentless scheming, ham-fisted division, we fervently needed a positive, upbeat unifier like Marco Rubio, for instance. Instead, the de facto national civil war will only escalate along tribal lines. And within this tribe, we desperately needed a return to the silence of Calvin Coolidge, and what you people have inflicted on us all is the WWE presidency. Remember, Trump headlined WrestleMania 23, if you've forgotten that. The Uhura Protocol, be careful what you wish for, you may get it, resoundingly applies. Because the other side, remember, always gets to fight back. And they will always be better at it. And you can guarantee that with the final finishing off of La Quinta Nostra, Julian Castro is the next great minority hope in the Democrat Party. He will be in 2020 what Barack Obama was to 2008. And it will be instant replay. I mean, you have accomplished nothing, Trumplicans, other than to guarantee another. You've done nothing other than to guarantee the 4th huge left-wing lurch forward in the next decade. 8. Boy, am I ever glad I'm an independent. I don't own any of this. 9. I had a meat curtain has fallen across America riff on Winston Churchill's Iron Curtain speech all ready to go, too. C'est la vie. At least watching the Democrat battle royale of intramural blood sport recriminations between their establishment and the burn feelers will be entertaining for a while. And finally, 10. Am I disappointed with last night's outcome? Well, as Magneto said in Days of Future Past, it's complicated. I guess the most straightforward answer I can give to that question, am I disappointed with the results last night, is yes and no. Now, am I disappointed about the next 4 years? Not at all. I had to resign myself to another quadrennium of liberal Democrat rule no matter who came out on top of this manure pile over 6 months ago when Trump clinched the GOP nomination. That was already baked into the cake. But about the 4 or 8 or more years beyond that, beyond 2020, yeah, I'm profoundly disappointed. 4 years of liberal Democrat rule has now been doubled or tripled at minimum. Trump will be able to impose the leftist agenda Nixon-like as Mrs. Clinton never could have. Because he will put an he will put an R stamp on it that the GOP Congress will not be in any position to oppose. And really, think about it. If they wouldn't fight Obama to the old Tea Party satisfaction, what makes anybody believe they'll resist their own president? The effect on the GOP base will be identical, as Trump-looking cultists will cheer on ideological heresies they would have ritualistically denounced coming from Hillary, and conservatives will stay their metaphorical blades out of the same party loyalty, misguided party loyalty, that prompted their sellouts to Trump during the 2016 campaign. Only never Trump, true conservatives, will stand in opposition, helplessly bearing witness to the ensuing policy and political calamities that, since Trump will be the face of the GOP and conservatism, will render him a one-term president if he lasts that long, and tar the right with the blame for them, Hoover-like, for decades to come. What could have been conservatism's renaissance has been deferred another decade if we're lucky. And how much additional, enhanced, irreparable damage will be done to the country and the world that could mostly or entirely have been avoided. And all because 40% of the GOP electorate wanted an entertaining strongman, their own Obama, over an actual conservative leader. So yeah, the Republicans won last night. The conservatism got decimated. I was always looking at this in the big picture. Not just the next 4 years, but the big picture. And in the big picture, the next 4 years, it was a wash. It was going to suck either way. Beyond the next 4 years, it would have been better if Hillary won. Because conservatism could have survived Hillary Clinton, who was also going to be a one-term president. I don't think it can survive Donald Trump. So, this is what the political wilderness looks like. 60 years of conservative gains, from Buckley to Goldwater to the Reagan and Gingrich revolutions, have been rolled back to square one, as even the one himself never achieved. And the architect of the left's fondest dreams is, well, Bill Clinton, I guess, since it was his ploy to impose the Donald on the GOP in order to get his wife back in the White House that over-succeeded. But its executioner will be a man of so little accomplishment, intellectual heft, and mental wattage that he can neither pronounce nor spell the word huge correctly. And this morning, most of the right doesn't remotely realize it. But they will